There is a moment in life that feels unbearable. A season where the phone stops ringing, where the people you expected to stay leave, where conversations fade, relationships dissolve, and silence replaces noise. And in that silence you begin to wonder, did I do something wrong? Why am I alone? Why does it feel like everyone disappeared at the same time? But what if the season isn't abandonment? What if it's intention? Sometimes God removes people not because they were evil, but because their voices were too loud. You couldn't hear him clearly because you were surrounded by opinions, expectations, emotional attachments, and distractions. So he quieted the room, not to punish you, but to speak to you. God often begins his deepest work in isolation. Not public elevation, not celebration, but separation. Before Moses led millions, he was alone in the wilderness. Before David wore a crown, he was forgotten in fields. Before Jesus began his ministry, he fasted alone in the desert. Isolation is not a sign of rejection. It is a sign of preparation. When God removes everyone, he removes dependence. When he removes noise, he creates clarity. When he removes comfort, he reveals purpose. You didn't lose them by accident. They were not meant to walk where God is taking you. Some people were assigned to a chapter, not the whole book. And when their purpose expired, God closed the door, quietly. You didn't fail them. You outgrew the version of yourself they were familiar with. This season hurts because silence forces you to confront yourself, your fears, your wounds, your questions, the parts of you that distraction once covered. But healing doesn't happen in crowds. Transformation happens alone. God speaks softly, and he will not compete with noise. That's why he removes relationships that keep you stuck. That's why he dismantles routines that distract you. That's why he allows loneliness, not to crush you, but to refine you. Because when everything else is gone, you finally listen. And what God says in isolation is often what sustains you in public. Right now you may feel unseen, unheard, unchosen, but heaven is paying attention. This quiet season is sharpening your discernment. It's teaching you to rely on God, not validation. It's teaching you peace without applause. You're learning to stand without leaning on people who were never meant to hold your weight. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Growth always is. But something sacred is happening in the silence. God is realigning your heart. He's removing attachments that would have broken you later. He's strengthening your spirit before increasing your responsibility. Because the next season requires clarity. And clarity is born in quiet. If you feel alone right now, don't rush to escape it. Don't fill the silence with noise just to feel something. Sit with God. Ask him what he's trying to show you. Ask him what he's trying to heal. Ask him what he's preparing you for. This season won't last forever, but what it produces will. Soon you'll look back and realize losing them saved you. Silence strengthened you. Isolation positioned you. And when God brings the right people into your life, they won't distract you from him. They'll align with him. Until then, stay faithful, stay still, stay open, because when God removes everyone, it's not the end. It's the moment he finally has your attention. What makes this season so difficult isn't just the silence. It's the questions that come with it. You replay conversations. You wonder what you could have done differently. You question your worth, your choices, even your fate. Because when people leave without explanation, your mind tries to fill the gaps with self-blame. But not every ending requires closure. Some endings are protection. God sees what you couldn't. Motives you never detected. Attachments that would have delayed your growth. He removed people not because they were bad, but because they were misaligned. They could walk with you emotionally but not spiritually. They could support the old version of you, but not the one God is shaping now. And if they had stayed, you would have stayed smaller. This is why God sometimes allows exits without warning, because gradual separation would have tempted you to hold on. So he made it clear, not cruel, clear. You didn't lose community. You gained discernment. You didn't lose support. You gained self-leadership. You didn't lose love. You gained alignment. Right now, God is teaching you how to stand without leaning, how to listen without external validation, how to obey without applause. These lessons can only be learned alone. That's why distractions fell away. That's why conversations feel shallow now. That's why familiar spaces feel uncomfortable. You are no longer where you were, but you haven't arrived where you're going yet. This in-between feels lonely because it is sacred. God often hides his greatest work in quiet seasons so ego can't interfere. He strips the audience before he releases the assignment, because if people had stayed, you might have obeyed them instead of him. And obedience is the foundation of purpose. Right now, your spirit is being trained to recognize God's voice without confirmation from others. You're learning to trust peace over popularity, conviction over comfort, truth over familiarity. This is not social isolation. This is spiritual alignment. Soon God will reintroduce connection, but this time it will be intentional. People who don't drain you, people who don't distract you, people who walk with God not just beside you. But before that happens, you must become secure without them. So don't rush this season. Don't chase replacements. Don't beg what God removed. Sit still long enough to hear what God is saying. Because once you hear Him clearly, you will never fear being alone again. The silence will stop feeling empty and start feeling safe. And one day you'll realize this season didn't isolate you. It introduced you to yourself and to God without interference. There will come a day when this season finally makes sense. You'll look back and realize that what felt like loss was actually alignment. What felt like loneliness was protection. What felt like silence was instruction. You didn't fall behind, you were pulled aside. God was teaching you how to walk without needing approval, how to choose peace over people, how to stay faithful when no one is clapping. And that strength will carry you farther than companionship ever could. One day the room will fill again, but you won't be the same person who once feared being alone. You'll speak with clarity, move with conviction, stand with peace, because you learned how to hear God when it was just you and Him. If you're in that quiet place right now, don't see it as rejection. See it as an invitation to grow deeper, to listen closer, to trust fully. God hasn't left you, He's drawing you nearer. There is a quiet strength being formed in you right now. Not the kind that comes from being surrounded by people, but the kind that grows when you learn how to stand alone without falling apart. This season stripped away more than relationships. It stripped away illusions, the need to be understood, the desire to be approved, the habit of running to people instead of God. And even though it hurt, it healed you in ways comfort never could. Because now you don't chase noise. You value peace. You listen before you react. You wait before you move. That didn't come from ease. It came from silence. God wasn't removing people to leave you empty. He was removing them to make room. Room for clarity, room for wisdom, room for a deeper connection with Him. Some voices had to fade so the right direction could finally become clear. And the truth is, if they had stayed, you might have stayed the same. But growth requires space, and space often feels like loneliness before it feels like freedom. So if you're in that quiet place right now, don't rush out of it. Let God finish what He started. Let Him rebuild your foundation. Let Him teach you how to trust His voice above every other. This season will end, but the strength you're gaining will remain. And one day, you'll thank God for the people He removed, because their absence taught you how to walk in purpose without fear. If this message spoke to you, take a moment to subscribe to this channel. More reflections like this are coming. For those growing in silence, finding clarity in loneliness, and learning to trust God deeply. You're not here by accident. Stay with us.